Delete live stream. We're gonna stop that live stream and do this one. I think it's working. I think it's working.
I have no experience with these things, but it says it's recording and it says it's taking notes.
All right. Well, then I look, we're getting there. Okay. It had to kick that one out to get to you too, I think. We're not. Okay.
I
It
think
looks
it's
like we
working.
are. All right. I'm going to pause that. Awesome. So, give me a little scoop. What had you say yes when I put out my request for people to chat with me online?
Um, I guess I've been following what you post about for a while, and it's always really interesting. So I thought I would put myself out there as a guinea pig to talk to you.
I love it. I'm excited to talk with you too. I find what you're up to, the tidbits that I do come across, really interesting and um, comforting in a certain way to know that there are people that like you doing work, the kinds of work that you're doing in the various parts of the universe that I don't get to touch much. So, um, was there any in particular thing you wanted to you that you want to talk about or that you want to make sure we get to in the next little bit of time here?
So I'm so curious about like the way you talk about feelings being infectious.
Uh-huh.
And I almost feel like where I work, that is a big thing that goes on with a lot of people.
Hmm.
And I feel in myself like the urge to try and do something about that, but I know that's not on me to do.
Maybe. I mean, one of the
I
things
think.
that I do like to play with is, I think often we are either mirroring each other or we are being sort of I sometimes call it like the gong in the room, like the sound that, right? If you have other gongs in the room, they'll also start to resonate, and we're all kind of hollow beings. So maybe there's a possibility for you to do whatever you can do in your body that can be another kind of infectiousness, at least if you see it happening in other directions that may or may not be as useful. Um, and the easiest way for me to talk about this would be if you're willing to give a kind of an example, and it can be generic, um, you know, but like if you can get some details of an example and that you can say just somebody was talking and somebody else got louder kind of a thing. So you don't have to use names or any of that. But um, do you have a moment where you noticed it?
Yeah, so it's often my coworker will get a phone call and then you can tell that the phone call is like not going that well and you can like you said like you can hear her like getting louder,
Hmm.
but then that energy comes back in like whatever was going on with that person at the other end of the phone then comes back into the room
Hmm.
and it's sort of like I noticed then that I want that to like I noticed that that's going to spread to me like
Yeah, what happens in you, or like what the last time that happened, what did you notice in yourself when it was happening?
so I noticed like her energy, it's not energy even like her demeanor
Uh-huh.
sort of like changes and there's more like
Yeah.
getting kind of puffing up and then I noticed like my instinct is to sort of like pull away from that but then I feel like actually then I want to fight it and I want to puff up and fight and getting that kind of
Uh-huh.
compassionate energy as well.
Oh, you're pointing out a really, really common dynamic. And and I think a lot of us, right? I mean, I don't know what your sort of cultural upbringing was, but I know that a lot of us sort of in the West have this weird dynamic with either even confrontation or some sense of like, I want to change something. And the way we've learned to change things is either like it has to feel a little confrontational and like big. We've got to get big in order to make the space to do it. Or the other thing is to protect ourselves from whoever else is doing that bigness in the world around us. And those are sort of these two ends of the same spectrum. And so the practice of actually just simply going, wow, you seem really upset. That must have been some interesting noises that other human being was making, right? Which is sort of like this more place where um, it's not that you don't feel the impact of it, but it's that you notice that sensation and you've learned sort of in the literacy of your own body that when you feel this sense of wanting to go this way or this way, that you've sort of got a new practice of going, oh, this sensation actually means there's something I want to say to this person,
Yeah.
but I'm not quite sure what it is yet. Does that sound close?
Yeah, and I managed that the other day. So we have a cafe here that sublets in our space, and someone is subletting the cafe from the people that sublet it from us, and they had left. I don't know why they have watermelons in England in November, but a crate of watermelons that were, shall we say, fairly aged
Okay.
in the kitchen. And I hadn't noticed this because they're renting the space. I wasn't going in it. And my coworker came in and she goes, "Oh my God, have you seen it? And they've left it in the kitchen." And I just couldn't, I was just like, I can see you're really upset right now. But can we slow it down? Because I can't actually hear what you're trying to say to me, but I know that I can see that you want to say something to me, but I can't right now.
Uh-huh. Were they able to then?
She was like, "I'm not talking fast. I'm not Oh, I am talking fast. So
Were
she
they
did
actually
catch it.
making this movement?
But yeah, she was
Thing?
like, "Ah."
Actually, you're
She just
actually
burst
doing
in the
that.
room. Yeah, she just burst in the room like going, "Ah."
Wow. That's so impressive. Most people that I talk to, like, they're not actually doing this, but sometimes it feels like they're doing that because of the way you feel in your body when they're
No,
getting loud.
she was like, I just hope she doesn't see this because she was actually like burst in the room like so agitated by these watermelons.
So interesting.
And I could feel it. I could feel it coming at me like a sort of tsunami sort of wave. And I was like, if I don't, I need to like drop down and just be a tree,
Is that what you
or
did?
this is going to sweep me away.
That's perfect. That was actually the next question I was going to ask you is you talked about this as a moment where you didn't get infected. You actually kind of did that clarity. And the way you did it was that you felt the sensation happening and you dropped sort of more like rooted in your body in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's fantastic. How did you know to do that?
I don't know. I just did.
Yeah, no, I think it's yeah.
I practice sort of centering and grounding a lot.
Hmm.
So I guess it's probably just from practicing it that it's changing.
Hmm. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think that's um the fact that you've been practicing is fantastic because that's how we have it kind of in our pocket, right? It's like a tool is only as useful as our body actually remembers to use it in the moment. And so that kind of repetition is huge. It's great. Usually, are there other people involved here too, where this kind of movement happens? And I here's the thing, I want to like really also honor the fact that like no one's wrong for doing it this way, right? This person
That's yeah.
That was probably how they learned to cope with whatever their life has been. And and to be fair, it works, right? It works for a lot of people. We've got the whole elections going on today here in the US, and it's kind of worked for some of the people in that to be like, the sky is falling. And but that's also kind of what I like, for me, this is what I'm doing here is recognizing that leadership really is a question of who's got the emotional, the most potent emotional centering in a space. And usually because we're smart animals, right? And the reason we do that in the first place is because it is how we get moving to take care of something that needs to be taken care of. And so the question you are in really is, how do I help somebody whose default is to do that, whether or not there's an actual bear in the room? Um, and am I guessing there are other people kind of in the mix here too who also get kind of yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So we're community building, so we have people that work in our office and then like various people that interact. So in some senses, like a lot of people go, oh, that person's being difficult or that person's being completely unreasonable. But
the
I,
watermelon
I mean,
person,
I don't think she
but they are,
is. I don't think I think that's just how she reacts, and it's
yeah.
not.
I see. So for them, and this is, I mean, this is also, right. I'm sure you've been following me a while on Facebook, like talk, right? This is a place where people go, this is a toxic workplace, right? When really there's one person sort of with their own way of reacting to the universe. And then there's a bunch of other people for whom that's really uncomfortable and going, I don't like this. This isn't going to work for me. And so, right, there's the normal tactical way to go about this is you have some conversations or you make some requests or you lay down some parameters for how you want things to go. Um, but that's usually two steps down the line, I think, from the sort of capacity building that you'd really love to see here, which would enable everybody to stay in community rather than ostracize the person who's got some ways of being that are uncomfortable. Is that right?
Yeah, because then also people then start talking about people behind their backs and that kind of. So
Yeah.
you're not talking to you're not even talking to the person about the behavior that you think is a problem.
Yeah. Well, that's the next stage. And I think, right, when you're talking about you wanting to shift the dynamic, and I don't know where you are in sort of the traditional power structure of this collective, if there is one. Um,
So
yeah, but
technically
tell me
we're
a little bit
a
more.
cooperative.
Uh-huh.
Technically we're a cooperative. This person is the CEO, and then I'm like the next person, like I look after the building.
Mhm.
But she wouldn't consider herself to be my boss because we're a cooperative.
Right. Yeah.
So if that makes sense.
Yeah. But you then also are interacting with the other people either more than they are or less or
It
same.
depends, yeah.
Depends
And
on
this time, like when she goes away, I then cover her role as well. So it's
how have you managed this? Have you been working together for a while?
I've been here for about 2.5 years, I guess.
Yeah. And
Um,
I don't hear you turning it into burnout or like, but there's some sense of you'd like to have a shift in the dynamic some way.
I think for me it sometimes makes me feel like I'm not being seen and heard, and then that feels very tender,
Uh-huh.
if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
that person's behavior also is like reminds me a lot of how my mother sometimes can be, which is like a whole extra level of tenderness.
Man,
But
thank you for bringing that though, because it's such a common thing that's happening behind the scenes that most people don't want to talk about when it comes to sort of workplace dynamics, that there is also this layer of us that our history comes with us, right? The body that we have brings our history, like it or not, however much work we've done or however much we think we might be sort of clear of whatever. Um, we are embodied the way we are embodied from our lived experience. And so, right, this person is over here doing what they know how to do, and you're over here responding in some of the ways that you know how to do, and some of the ways you don't yet know how to do your practice. I hear you. That's what I hear. I hear you practicing at some edges of like, my usual. What would your usual way have been with your mother? Would it be to have done this one? Like it's
Yeah,
a
like collapse.
not to be seen? Hmm.
Collapse or run, like I want to get out of here, like turning into like Eric Cartman, like screw you guys, I'm going home. That didn't even sound like
Yeah,
Cartman, but like,
yeah, yeah.
that's who I think of.
When you like I don't know if in this moment the other day when you rooted and chose to be a tree instead, uh did you have that feeling of invisibility, or did you have that feeling, or did you actually go, "Oh wait, I'm seeable and she is seeing me here." I'm
Yeah,
Is it she? I realize I didn't
it,
catch.
it is a she in this case.
I know, yeah. Um So that's interesting too, right? Because often, and this is a place where it's sort of at the edges of how do we be in our bodies together, right? And it does come back to sort of how do we do inclusion with each other. Um, and it shouldn't be fully on you to make yourself seeable to another person. And when we're in community, that is part of the work that we're doing is how do I actually find myself full and whole in this present moment, and recognize that this stuff is not that person's stuff is separate, separate and yet related, and keep dancing with that dynamic. What do the other people do with her when she shows up like this and with them? Do they also feel not seen?
That's what some people have said as well.
Uh-huh. Has anybody ever
And I
just
think,
said it?
sorry, I didn't hear that
Has
somehow.
anybody ever just said it? Has anybody ever just in a moment gone, I don't think I'm going to make up a name. And I don't think you're seeing me right now. Can you even see me? Like, am I standing? I don't know. Has anybody ever said it directly?
I've been tempted to say that, but I never have.
How come?
Because my sort of patterning is always to just like, and this is why I think this is why I'm trying with all these practices, because my sort of default is to turn that in and blame myself.
Oh, yeah,
And I'm trying to not do that,
yeah.
like consciously trying to not do that. But I don't feel like I could say, I mean, I did say the other day, this person gave me some feedback that something I had done was like total a piece of work that I had done was like totally wrong. And I was surprised by that. And so I said, "Oh, so like, did my changes to this document not save? Like, in what way was it wrong?" And they said, "Oh, there was this line in there that I think shouldn't have been in there, and I would have written it differently." So, so I said to her,
What happened in you right in that moment?
like,
Are you feeling
if
it
you
now?
think, so I was like, if you think I should have written one line in something differently, like it's not like you would have done it a different way, it's actually kind of hurtful when you describe that as totally wrong. And
Mm.
it feels like the work I've done wasn't appreciated.
Hmm.
And I would really like it if you give me feedback if it's actually specific, clear, and actionable.
How'd that go?
And she went, "Oh, yeah, I guess it would have been more helpful if I'd said it that way."
It sounds to me like you're doing a damn good job of actually as you're shifting your own dynamic, also beginning to shift the dynamic with her too. Is that true?
I maybe she said thank you for asking for that. So
Yeah. I mean, I find a lot of times when I'm working with somebody who's like embedded in sort of one of the upper, look up here, this is like the upper echelons of like some kind of a corporate structure. And they've got somebody like this who they, maybe isn't technically their boss, but is somebody that they have to collaborate with a whole lot and has a kind of a dynamic that feels a little like that. Um, this actually, what you're talking about doing, is the core of the work that begins to change the dynamic for the entire workplace culture. So I just want to acknowledge you are already in process changing the infectiousness of that. Uh, you're interrupting the infectiousness of that mood in the space. So just for a moment, like, can we give you like a big pat on the back for that?
I received that. And I, with this person, I know it that whatever their behavior comes from the fact that they have like a deep love for this organization
Yeah,
and like a deep drive to do things and get things done, which I completely share.
yeah,
Um, because I love this organization as well. We have it's a really special kind of community building that
yeah.
people can use, and we keep our prices accessible to like grassroots community groups and then get like wealthier organizations to pay 3 times as much to use the space. And we
This,
have like all stuff going on in our building, like an independent bookshop and a cafe and a bike shop and community garden. And this person has been here for a long time. Um, and I I respect that sometimes their frustration comes from other people not knowing like some of the like sort of deep embedded knowledge that they have of the place and their desire for things to go well.
mhm.
And also like things are always going to get messed up here because it's such a big like complicated system with so many moving parts and so many like at the moment it's like a lot of new people coming into the space and then
Mhm.
doing things like leaving food lying around and
Mhm.
things like where they you think they should know, but the people.
This is interesting edge too, because there are right so many places we could go with this because I want to know more about the organization and what this, right? Because it does sound like something just fantastic that you guys are on about. And I think that is a place where sometimes you can call somebody to uh their own capacity, right? Because I don't know if this person notices that that is a reaction and then what it's costing them. Right? Because I don't know about you, but if I get ramped up about everything, including a watermelon every day, I'm tired at the end of the day, right? And I don't know if she's feeling burnt out at all, but I think that can happen over time. And especially when you love something and the fear of getting burnt out or whatever. So, but it can be a place of coalition building actually to go, I love this place. I know that this is coming from your deep care for this place. And in fact, my willingness to kind of come up and do this with you is also coming from this deep love. And how do we actually make that value, right? That is, for me, this is also where, like, when my body is reacting to something, it's almost always because there's something that's bumping up against my value system, right? So there's the thing that matters to me. And so, right, in this case, being seen matters to you. And also maybe having a workplace where people don't feel invisible or put upon, is also important. And whatever,
Yeah, I find that exhausting.
yeah, and whatever she's bumping up against is this feeling of like, what the hell are the old watermelons doing in here? Like, please take care of the space would be the value, I would bet. And so the more you can come together as a collective and say, look, can we practice finding what that value is and then seeing what it looks like as a structural action together? Because this is also the place of maybe it's building policy, or maybe it's right instruction. It's tricky, right? With a co-op, I don't know if you want to build, and you want to be careful about building too much policy. Um, but it's a place where what's happening when she or you or anybody is going, wouldn't you think that this is common sense? You've got a series of questions. She's got a huge series of questions because she's been there for a long, long time. And your actual the possibility for you is, I don't know if you're new enough anymore, but you could, or somebody else, if there's somebody else who's a little newer in the system but is consistent, um, can ask a lot of questions to see, like, what are the questions you're asking yourself? So that you end up with what I call the sort of standard operating inquiry rather than a dogmatic policy. It's what are the questions we as a cooperative ask ourselves about how we want to tend to our space, place, relationships together.
Well, I just really wish we could sit down, like different people from the building sit down and ask some of those questions because that are just thinking of like doing that feels like it would be so useful for because there's like basically it's like five different businesses and people have like the guy from the bike shop is like, well, I always put my stuff in the kitchen in the refrigerator in the cafe kitchen, and then the cafe people are like, why is there an out of date chicken sandwich in here in my vegan cafe? And the guy's like, well, I've always done that. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, but now there's a new person who's running the cafe. You might need to have a conversation with her about putting your stuff in what is now technically her refrigerator. And he's
Mhm.
like, but I've always done it. And you're like, but you haven't done it with her. You did it with somebody that you had a conversation about it 20 years ago.
Yeah. I kind of love this as a fun, right? I mean, the complexity of what you're actually sort of orchestrating here is because you do. It sounds like you got five different space businesses essentially, and you got you and this other person who are, I mean, in a way, attempting to orchestrate culture across all of these, right? And by culture, I just mean all of the things that we repeatedly do, like put our chicken sandwiches in the fridge
Yeah.
or watermelons where we leave them, or you know, um, or do like this when we talk to each other, or all of it. And so um, I mean, it's really quite an interesting place for you to be in practice around how do I get this? Could you sit down? You just said you would love to sit down and ask some questions of different people. Could you do that?
I don't know, but I want to propose that we maybe do because it's like we have like this bookshop who run events in the cafe space, and now the cafe have opened, and there's some kind of grit or friction between these groups about how this arrangement works, and like different people having different expectations for what they want to get out of
Yeah,
the event. But
yeah,
and they're all trying to talk to me, and I'm like, but you need to talk to each other.
yeah.
Like it's
I
not
bet
me that
I bet you have, right? Like that one's come up twice now. Talk to each other. However, you and I think both know this, that most of us have very little capacity to even, especially if it's feely or like confrontational or any of that kind of thing. Sorry, am I freezing?
it could be here.
Let me turn my things
Oh
off
no,
a
I
little.
think my internet says it's on the right one.
Yeah, I was just feeling like I was freezing a bit, so I'm going to turn some other things off here. Um, the The questions though about like talking like, oh, I have a value then of you guys actually having this conversation together, but recognizing that most of us don't even have the tools to say what we think in a moment with somebody else, especially if there's some question about conflict or power or, right? They've been there longer. I can't say anything about the sandwich, or I'm gonna say something about the sandwich and the other person going, well, wait a second, like I just, and so recognizing we don't have a lot of tools as individual human beings or as cultural practitioners with each other on what do we do? How do we navigate conflict together? Which for an organization like this feels like a really important, maybe useful, of all the structures you could build, that would be the one that I would be most interested in hearing about.
And I don't, that's something that I don't think we have.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we really thought about it as I mean, I've been reading, oh, I'm just looking for the browser tab, but this is a cursed browser with too many things in it. Oh yeah, here I got it. Creative interventions toolkit that I found that some people have made about like it's like about transformative justice,
Hmm.
but it has so much in there about like getting people to ask questions and think about the ways that like we're all causing harm sometimes and
Yeah.
what does that mean and like our that was
Yeah. And I think,
and
right,
in a sense about more like serious interpersonal violence, but I think actually the same things apply to like the sandwich situation or whatever.
well, and just like your like repeated practice of grounding, the repeated practice of doing it when the stakes are really small are what give you the sort of musculature and the ability when the stakes are a little bit higher, right? When there's somebody actually doing this near you, right? Which I mean, for anybody could feel scary. Like, could give us the inclination to do this. And so it's, the repetitive practice on things like sandwiches is actually what gives us the sort of infrastructure and the cultural body to remember when the thing is bigger, like this contract feels unfair or whatever shows up there, right? Then we actually have some tools because we've been in practice in some ways around the other things. So I think it's a great, I think, sandwiches and watermelons are great places to build some of the inquiry for real, like, because you're not gonna, once you get money involved or you got outcomes from an event involved or something like this, um, you're navigating in sort of a more theoretical framing that is harder for people in bodies to actually um, kind of grok like what do we want to see happen and how do we actually make it tangible. So, do you know what questions you want to ask?
So like I mean I want so the like the bookshop want to run events in the cafe space and the cafe people are like, oh well we don't really want to let them use the space for free anymore, even though they've been doing that. We want to start charging them money to do this. And then the bookshop are like, oh well, but we sell drinks at the bar. And
Mhm.
then the cafe go, oh well, the drink sales have gone down in recent months, and the bookshop are like, yeah, but that's because you've got like Coca-Cola and Brewdog beer, and we had really nice craft beer before, and your fridge is like your bar fridge is half empty, so people don't buy unless they have a stocked fridge.
Mhm.
And it's just like they have these different expectations, like the cafe, like we want to keep the costs down and or make as much money as possible. In the bookshop, like well, we want to create this experience for people, and it's I think they just need to say that to like I feel like they need like
Well, they
people all
probably
sit down
framework
together.
saying it too, you know? Like, I mean, I think I can understand why I wouldn't want to say it to somebody directly if I didn't know, right? And then, this why a co-op is sort of a beautiful way to recognize, like, as human beings, we are right in an impl in a traditional structure. You go, here's the arbiter, and here's the answer, and here's how you do things, and so you can make demands of other adult human beings in a way that, at least in theory, and I don't know what the co-op infrastructure, I mean, the co-ops I've been involved in do have some, some policies, some sort of things that they hold important. Um,
So we're a co-op, like us in the building is the organization that run the building, we're a co-op, but not all of the tenants are co-ops, and the cafe are not a co-op. For example, they're a charity. So
Interesting.
I think that they're in more of a like traditional not-for-profit charity, like we're trying to get funding, like more of a traditional not-for-profit sort of scarcity space, I think.
Yeah.
And then the other organization, it's two people, but they effectively operate like a co-op and they are very much, they're very cooperative with like other organizations in the building. Whereas the cafe are newer for a start
Mhm.
and so far don't seem to be. like so on board with that value of cooperation that I think most people in the building value, and it just feels like this that like
Uh,
there's that friction or that
it's like, honestly, it's like,
sort
it's
of
like when any organization brings on another organization, essentially, right? Other companies buy other companies up, and then they've got to figure out how do we merge these cultures together in when, there's a whole way of being that organization. And I don't know if they existed elsewhere and are coming into this
yeah,
space.
yeah, yeah. And now they've come into the space.
And I don't know if the CEO like was very, liked the people who were there before. And right, there could be all of this, all, I don't know when the last time you had a major change like this was. Is this, has it been a
This is
long
quite big. So there was another cafe in there before that were co-op, and they were quite different.
time?
They closed it probably a year and a half ago, so the new folks have come in.
Hmm.
But and everyone wants there to be a cafe, but also people want it to be the same as the one that was there before, and they're not the same as the one that was there before. So there's like it's just the cultural, like the cultures haven't quite sort of
That's the
like
interesting conversation from my perspective is like, even if you can begin to like just you might see, right? What does a cafe have some values as a charity, right? Because they may have a value of making as much money as possible in order to fund to fund their charitable endeavors. I don't know what those are, but and that might not be a good mesh necessarily with the other groups. But the question still becomes, how do we support each other, even if we are living slightly different values? How do we actually support each other so that because what you want to get to is we're both doing this because we love this organization,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. And like so they're an anti-racism charity, so we were saying, well, maybe have an anti-racism book club that like in collaboration with the bookstore and get the books from there. Because they were just talking, they said we could have an anti-racism book club. Oh, we can go up to Waterstones and buy these books, and be like, but you've got the independent bookstore that's already in the building. Like this,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
And
here's this opportunity to build that relationship and collaborate. And they were like, oh, we hadn't even thought of that.
uh-huh. So a lot of it might be that their culture just hasn't even had the chance to learn from the cultures that are already in the space, which could be really beneficial because it sounds like, and I don't know how come if the other cafe went out of business because of lack of funds or if there was some other thing happening, but
It was
um,
the lockdowns.
oh
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
the two COVID lockdowns that kind of killed them.
yeah,
And they were mostly a group of really young people as well, and just got very demoralized
yeah,
by it.
yeah. I mean, I think there's in a way, right? This moment, if you can really hold, and this takes that rooting for you, really hold this sort of like crisis opportunity. It doesn't sound like the current CEO has maybe the capacity to hold that in her physical body, because you're going to need that in order to support the conversation and you might need to be I wouldn't sort of put yourself in as moderator exactly, but you might need to sort of be the one who instigates a kind of a conversation about what are the shared outcomes, right? And how do like, what does it look like to support each other? And how do we actually, maybe we lay it out on the table, like, here are our stated values and here are our stated values. But like, what does that look like in the context of this book club? How do we think about it in the context of this book club? Just as a way of getting people sort of thinking about things in another way. Um, it's a lot of interesting opportunities I think you have here. Right, it'll be expanding your practice as well, for sure. Because you're definitely going to also have to want to be willing to be seen, I think, in order to take up some space in this version of it.
Yeah, and for me, the not being seen thing is what leads to the sort of burnout sort of feeling.
Hmm.
Uh,
Say more about it. Do you have I realize we're close to sort of our allotted time. I have a little more time. Do you?
yeah, I do. Um,
I know you probably it's probably late there though.
it's like eveningy time here, but I have to be here for a while because there are people having a
Uh-huh.
meeting. But yeah, so for me, it's I think the not being seen thing is what kind of leads to sort of burnout feelings because I feel like I work really, then I start working harder and harder to try and be seen.
Mm.
I think I've figured out. But then there's like an unlimited amount of work that you can do for people, and they still just don't see you in the way that you want to be seen, right? They see you as somebody who will do things for them.
Yeah. Do you know, like, there was this one example of the coming in and having this, and you made yourself seen in that moment. Did it feel like that was work on your part to have to become seen? Or did you
That's
actually feel better after?
that's a really good question. At the time, it felt quite scary, but
Mhm.
like I was going, okay, no, uh, no, I'm not just taking this, and I'm not just going to like let this crisis situation take me over and feel like I'm in a crisis situation as well. That didn't feel like work, but it felt like audacious, maybe,
Mhm.
which feels unfamiliar, and then that feels scary.
Scary. And I mean, I think really what I'm like, scary and fulfilling.
Maybe, yeah.
Mhm.
I like that, but
How did you know you didn't feel seen in that moment? Because that would be the most important thing from my perspective is actually for you not to burn out. And so, regardless of what else happens with all these other sort of people, this is the place for you.
I was going to. It was like 5 p.m. I was going to ballet class later, and I didn't want to get caught up in a crisis and end up staying at work and like not eating properly and not drinking water and not going to ballet and just ending up staying doing loads of extra unpaid time sorting out this crisis situation. And I was like, no, no, that's like I know that that would happen if I let this
Uh,
crisis mood catch me, which has happened like plenty of times before, right?
yeah, but in this case, there was an outcome that mattered enough to you. I'm going to my ballet class, damn it, and you cannot fuck with it, right? Um,
Yeah,
and so maybe there's an edge of this work in here that's about you knowing that your evening, your day, your life, your internal state is as valuable to you, even if there's no ballet class happening. But if we come back to the simpler version of it, is something in you started with, I don't even hear the not being seen. I heard, I'm gonna override myself and take care of the situation if I don't say something else here. Something like that. Like, what's the sensation that tells you you're about to either override yourself or be overridden or not, which I'm assuming is what they're talking about actually in the not being seen is I'm doing all this work and nobody even notices it. Is that what you mean?
yeah, yeah. And I think that's really so common when you work in hospitality, isn't it? Because you do all the work of caring for people and then they only notice when it goes wrong. Like you become visible when something goes wrong, like something floods or something's on fire or there's a fly in the food or like
Yeah.
you only become visible when it sometimes to some people. Not because you get lovely customers as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
But
well, what's the first sensation that you have of I'm about to not be seen here or I'm not being seen here? What's the body sensation? Pick another time where maybe you didn't do it, but what's the first moment that you've noticed it?
it always for me it feels like my throat closing up and kind of like my chest kind of caving in. Like And it feels like grief as well, I think.
Well, probably. Um, did you
But
have that sensation first before this other sensation of I'm not gonna miss my ballet class? Uh, did you have that sensation first in this moment too?
I'm trying to remember because it was a little while ago.
Okay.
I think it was more like this same, I think it was more like I could get kind of washed away by this.
Uh-huh.
Like I could get knocked, like pulled into it, like sucked into this, like it's a tide or a flood or something that could suck me into this.
Hmm.
And like I would override myself and just jump, get all in on this drama that's happening. And
Yeah. You
in
know,
that case, then it's like not seeing myself as well,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And not honoring yourself. Yeah.
But I think it does come from the same place though, because I think part of it is about like if I do a good enough job, then this person will see me and then like they'll feel cared for, they'll feel happy in some way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that you know that's not how it works. Like you can keep giving and giving, and it's not going to like
Yeah.
it's
It
not
depends.
going to have that
Some
effect.
people, some people will eventually, but most people, if they haven't yet, aren't gonna. Um, Without you shifting the culture and actually saying, you know what? Say thank you, God damn it. I mean, you don't have to say it that way necessarily, but finding a new way because, I know it's tricky to think, some people say we don't train people, we train dogs, but I don't know, dogs, people, we're all mammals of some kind and we're all essentially learning, if I keep eating at 6 p.m. every day, I'm hungry at 6 p.m. eventually. And so this practice of what does it take for you to be in your body, not just for the sake of reclaiming yourself, though certainly for that, to like come up out of the burnout, but also to begin redesigning the culture such that it becomes one wherein we do see each other, we acknowledge each other, and we don't wait for it to turn into chaos and mayhem before we do that. Um, because that's really where that sort of burnoutable culture and the toxicity and all of. And you're right. In order to practice it, you've got to not burn yourself out on the edge of somebody else's pattern of not seeing you. Um, and I mean, I love the fact that you pointed to when you chose to stand your space and like honor yourself, that actually it felt good to you, right? That audacity may not have been easy to do in the moment, but you felt glad you'd done it. And so what I would do, my approach right here, right now would be how do you build your sort of your muscle, the internal muscle of first noticing. First is just noticing, noticing, noticing. Because I don't know how many times a day you have this feeling, but my guess is it's probably sometimes it's 3 or 4 times a day.
Mm.
Is that true? Sorry. Um, and the flip side of that is maybe it's 3 or 4 times a day that you get to remember yourself as potent and visible. Um, and it would, and eventually, as you keep practicing, you might get to the place where you do say, you know what, I made her name. Her name is Anne in my head. So like, you know what, Anne, I know you're upset about this thing. And I'd like you to acknowledge the fact that I just did XYZ thing and I did a pretty damn good job. Sure, I got the one line you didn't. The one line wasn't the way you wanted it, but the rest of it was pretty damn good. Could you thank me for that? Might be revolutionary for her, honestly. For all we know, a lot of this upset is she never feels acknowledged in her life either. Never even occurred to her that she could ask for it, right? But the practice I would have for you is, and this is my go-to, if you ever see people with one weird fingernail polish on or a dangly thing that's awkward, it's because I've been telling people to put one weird fingernail polish on, something elbows to fingertips, mainly because, right, you have sight, you will see it when it passes your visual field if you use your hands. But if, right, even when you're doing things, if you can see it on your hands, it'll give you a second to just interrupt the pattern and just check in. Have I had this collapse feeling or this bowling over feeling at all in the past hour? However long since I last saw my nail polish? Wear your ring on a different finger. What you want to do is have that thing remind you to just like check in with your body a couple of like really almost a couple of times an hour. And all you're going to do is, did I have a moment of not being seen? And notice how powerful that sensation is in your body, right? Because that is where the burnout happens. It's this repeated sensation. And not only that, my guess is if you walk into a room and you're like, right, and there's a room full of people and they know you and they know that if you're kind of a boss to them in some way, they may come along with you too. So also remembering this is how you shift the culture of burnout is by actually saying, you know what, it's worth it for me to honor myself right now. Is there something to what I want that I want to say here? Can I say it with love, with remembering that actually like I'm claiming this value on not just for yourself, but on behalf of all of us. I want all of us to know that we are seen and valued. So I'm going to take up the space for that right now.
Mm, that's
You may
that
choose
feels really.
something a lot of the time with it, and that's okay. But the noticing of it will not, it will, the noticing of it in and of itself will begin to shift your physiology because your body's not going to tolerate you continuing to do it when you have the noticing of it. Do you think that's useful?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Oh,
Um,
kind of scary but useful because I
yeah.
think I am in the pattern of being the like slightly being the sort of, oh, I'm tired and I'm trying to like hold all these things.
I mean, which is not, there's nothing wrong with it. It's for me, this is the question, am I deciding that now I get to like to be collapsing and like, am I really going to rest and let myself rest and be like, you know what? I'm not dealing with your shit today. But if I'm feeling it, I'm already dealing with it. So that to me is the honoring place of like just honoring. I already have this feeling. I'm already using up my energy over it. So I might as well use it up in a way that helps strengthen that cycle for myself.
Yeah, and for everyone else around as well, isn't it? Because
Okay. Yeah. Um,
oh, thank you. That's wow.
good. I'm glad. I'm glad. Yeah. I'm aware I've done a lot of talking during this conversation, and I want to make sure that you have felt seen and heard in this conversation. Do you?
I definitely felt seen and heard in this conversation, Jade, and it is delightful talking to you.
I love it. How do you know in your body that when you like, so there's the feeling of not feeling seen and heard. How do you know when you are seen and heard? When it happens sort of more organically?
That's a excellent question, and I don't know. I think I need to start tracking that.
So look, that would be if we had like a series of sessions together, that would be step number two for my I would go first look at all the places where you're doing this one, mainly because we're more attuned to it, right? We are as smart animals, we are more attuned to the places where we're in danger than the places where we're in ease and abundance. And so that's smart, but it also means that that's the best place to start to intervene in a pattern. But the second layer is what's that other body actually, once you start to get some versatility there, what's that other body feel like? And how often can I invoke that one? Because it may be that you can decide you're seen. And out of that body, you may have a lot of ease with saying, you know what? I don't see, like, did you acknowledge that person over there? Like, it might become very easy for you to actually orchestrate a culture of seeing.
I'm going to start tracking that because I've been tracking the like what feels like pressure and collapse for like a couple of months, like so I've been in the practice of noticing that for a couple of months.
Okay, so then I would put the reminder on, but then have the reminder be for the check-in. Have I had this other body? And the reason I asked you if you could find it right now is because all you need is one solid memory of a place. Actually, I know a place. That moment where you were like, I'm going to my ballet class. We're not playing this game today. I think you're fantastic. I think I'm fantastic. And here's what we're going to do. What does that body feel like? The audacious, on the flip side, like beyond the scared, because the scared was before you did it, right? But the flip side of that, when you felt like, well, that was pretty audacious of me, and I'm glad I did that.
I mean, it felt like rooted, I guess. So kind of like if I was doing ballet, it would be like I was like balancing, on like one leg on one toe and just all the muscles are switched. Like you're not like
So it's
gripping.
not just sunk down rooted, it's rooted and also like
Like,
rise.
yeah, in both directions, like rooted over center. But like you feel like I don't know how to describe. It's like you feel like there's this column of power, I guess.
Yeah. Is there a word that you could use as a shortcut for you to just invoke that body every time you see your reminder?
Like I don't know, like pirouette or something. Because that's what you do when you. That's
Yep.
what you have to do to do a pirouette. It's like you have to have the audacity to like
Yeah.
go for it,
Yeah.
like engage all these muscles, but not be gripping. I don't know how to describe it. Ballet is just a very weird
I mean,
experience.
rooted is the first word you used, and I mean, and I think as long, it doesn't matter. I don't care what the sound is that you make. All I care is that you have just something simple enough that when you see your reminder, you go, huh, where's, like, do I have access to that rooted body? Could I? And just to begin to rewire your whole physiology towards this ease and sort of tenacious. I love the image of a pirouette. That's so beautiful.
Because what I think is so weird was when I started doing the reason that came to me is when I restarted doing ballet and started relearning how to do pirouettes as an adult. It was like this. You think you have to do this like whole scary thing, and it's like use all of this force, and actually, it's you have to be relaxed for it to work. Otherwise, relaxed but not like resting. Relaxed.
I love it. Thank you for bringing that image in. It's always such a pleasure to work with people who are artists or athletes or have that like nuanced knowing, like that fully embodied knowing that the thing that looks the most difficult is actually something that you have to bring a total nonchalantness to in a certain way, along with a really a specific musculature. So it's a great image
Because when
for
you if you grip and try to turn, then it's like shoulder like, and this is what like you do when you're beginning. You're like, and then it's like all over that axis, and it doesn't work.
Yeah,
Wow.
good.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. I am it's such an honor
I'm gonna take
to have a conversation with you.
I'm gonna take that and play that practice and play with it. But
Do. Absolutely do. Yeah. So are you okay if I share? Let me turn this off now. Are you okay if I share this?
yeah, yeah,
Great. Great. And I'm I'm excited to hear. Will you follow up? Will you follow up in at least the next couple of weeks and let me know like how it's going?
Yeah, thank you. I will. And I hope it goes well in the US. I forgot I've when I booked this, I forgot it was your election day and
It's fine. I'm well practiced at the chaotic universe that is the United States at this point. Yeah. So,
because the news here is it's the way they report it here. It's like they obviously look for the most extreme
oh,
things
it's certainly a hot mess. I mean,
about.
I don't know what will happen. I don't think we'll know today, but I think we're in for the US being very USian in either, it doesn't matter, right? Either way it goes. I think,
Yeah,
yeah, we're just gonna see people are gonna have a lot of big feelings one way or the other. So, and that's to me, that's always the scariest thing is all of us who don't have the capacity to like root and be clear and change the dynamics in a space.
yeah,
Yeah, more of that for all of us.
yeah. That's what I feel really nervous about is seeing the news stories about like
Yeah.
if more of what happened in 2020 happens and like the way that some of those people are like laying the ground for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
You know, it's a
it's
wild.
not.
I know I always sort of keep holding in the space of like, who knows? Like, I don't know, maybe ultimate, because otherwise we just keep band-aiding things back together and making it look okay. Like, I don't know, maybe collapse is the next thing. Um, but
I do wonder that as well, actually.
but I do worry about all the people who will be caught in it if that's the next
Yeah,
stage. So, it's the both and.
it's
Okay.
always the both, isn't it?
Well, I hope you
It's
can rest. I am gonna go and finish up with a few things before I check on those.
that. Thank
little-
you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for this. It was really lovely talking to
Yeah,
you.
my pleasure. Take care.